Welcome back. You're watching 101. We're talking with astronaut and pioneer Dr. Buzz Aldrin. You're very open and honest in your book, in your autobiography, Return to Earth, about the difficulty, and you've mentioned this briefly, but you're very open about the difficulty you faced when you came back, not being prepared for the limelight, and how it triggered the depression and alcoholism you had to deal with.
I don't know what I could have done. I could have said, wait a minute, I don't think I'm qualified to go on a landing mission because my grandfather committed suicide, my mother did. Maybe you shouldn't take me on a mission. Nobody's going to say anything like that. You're going to do the best that you can as situations come along. Everybody is a little different. Each person is a little bit different. I realize afterward that depression and alcoholism go sort of hand in hand. One leads to the other. And clearly I inherited the genes that made me susceptible to depression when I did not have a structured life, and it led also to alcoholism. So when I wrote my first book, I didn't know that, but in 1973, when I wrote my first autobiography, it wasn't clear to me that I had inherited genes that led to more than depression, that led to alcoholism. But in a few years, it became quite clear that I had inherited those tendencies also. And so I went through treatment several different times. And now, in about a day or two, I will have accumulated 29 years without drinking any alcohol.
It's your wife of 20 years, Lois, who's credited to a large degree with turning your life around and being a great motivator. How does she cope with the high-profile lifestyle you both lead?
Well, she kind of likes the activities that bring us into the public social events. A good bit in parts of the world, your social standing depends upon how much money you have, how much money you've made in your life. Well, if you're a military person and you serve as part of NASA, your accumulation of wealth is not very high. It's very low level, but you do reach notable status, celebrity status. So we have fame, but not the fortune that goes along with us. We enjoy the opportunities to meet different new people wherever we go.
Do you think now, with the amount of discussion that goes on and how sort of more open the communication is, that we're past all the conspiracy theories of whether we did go to the moon or not, whether there was stories about sightings of UFOs and so on? I mean, obviously this has gone on and on for a long time. Do you think we're past that stage?
No, we'll never be past the attraction of a selfish person to be able to accuse the management of a government or an organization of a conspiracy. There will always be accusations of a conspiracy or that we would do something that or that we might not have done something that we said we'd do. There are always people who are looking for that 15 minutes of glory by pointing out to the rest of the world something that they feel was the way it happened instead of the way all the rest of the world believes it. We'll never get beyond that.
I know you actually brought that chapter to a close by popping the guy when he accused you. He sort of confronted you. I saw that. It's all on YouTube and stuff. And that's, I mean, I guess all that now, hopefully they won't bother you with that stuff anymore.
Well, I don't think that individual will, but you never can tell. He would still like to get a lot of attention from the public.
The other day after I met you the first time, I remember I glanced up at the very clear sky and I saw the moon that was out in the evening. And I wondered, I mean, obviously we all sit there and look with fascination at the moon. It's gone on for millennia. When you look up at the moon now, what do you think?
Well, I can see a place that brings back memories of having visited there. But I see the same moon up there that other people do, and I would have just about the same amount of difficulty to point out on a photograph exactly where we landed. But I did go through the experience of being there, and when you leave the Earth and head toward the moon, the Earth gets smaller and smaller, and the moon still stays about the same size until you get pretty close. So there are three objects in the sky, in the black sky of space, that look about the same size as you're heading, and you're in between them in the same plane as the Earth-Moon plane, but you're traveling toward the moon. And it's a very unusual situation for a human to be in, to realize that you have left the immediate vicinity of one object, the Earth. When you're in orbit around the Earth, it's still, you're very much attached to that object that you're orbiting around. And you still see the expanse of Earth out. You're only a couple of hundred miles above it. But when you actually leave that object and move toward another, it gives you a sense of a different coordinate frame that you're in space. You're moving from one object to another. You have imagined that, you have thought about it, but actually when it takes place, then there's the realization of reality. The moon still looks the same until you get quite close to it. As we got quite close to it, the sun moved behind the moon, and it gave a great glow emanating outward from around the black disk of the moon. And it was a very eerie look to it. It had a three-dimensional aspect, but we couldn't capture it on film. It was that this was the solar corona coming outward. It wasn't the atmosphere of the moon that was causing this, most likely, because there isn't any atmosphere there. Now, once you're in orbit around the moon, that's a different moon than you and I see when we look up into the sky now and look at the moon. We are in orbit around something, and it's very forbidding. It's a very rough-looking place to be. It's not hospitable at all.
I think you said magnificent desolation.
Well, that was after I got on the ground, on the surface of the moon, and came out of the spacecraft, and Neil and I began looking around, and I think the words came to me that would contrast what I was observing, and that was the magnificence of human beings finally reaching the point that many had dreamed of, where now two human beings, actually with the support of all the technology and all the educational institutions and the government, put together an ability to take two people there. What a magnificent tribute that is to humanity to have reached that point. But now when you see those two people walking around on that surface, what a desolate location. The moon there at Tranquility Base was more desolate than any desert, any forest, any other thing here on Earth. You just can't imagine the total lifelessness. There's no air, there are no molecules to see. There's nothing in the scenery around there that's alive. It's all dead, unalive. Desolate is a word that really combines with the magnificence of people being there.
You've led a fascinating and challenging life. What would you like your legacy to be? How would you like people to remember Buzz Aldrin?
Well, I haven't given up trying to improve on things that have to do with space transportation. I came along in a time period that enabled humans to fly in the air. I came along and learned how to fly in the air, and then had the very good fortune to be one of the few human beings who could get on a rocket that would go up above the atmosphere and attain enough speed to stay into orbit. Now there are 450 some human beings who have done that. But I also was one of the very fortunate few, the 24 human beings who've been able to travel from the Earth to the gravity field of another object, the moon. That's a very, very fortunate occurrence in all these millions of years of progression that's led to the maturing of life here. I mean, we think we're mature. My sense is that we're just beginning to be productive, intelligent people here on the surface of the Earth. And we've demonstrated that intelligence by being able to go to another location. That's the beginning of space travel. What will it be like in the future? Well, maybe it'll continue, but the distances involved are so tremendous, and we don't have that much information about the planetary systems that might exist around neighboring stars. Do we think there's life out there? Most of us do think there's life out there. Is it intelligent? That's a jump. That's a big jump. We don't know all that much about what it took for human life to evolve here on Earth into a point where we became what we think are intelligent people. We still have many of those conflicting ideas that make it difficult for groups of people to get along with each other. Is that a natural human trait? It probably is.
Well, Dr. Buzz Aldrin, I wish you a long life of many more moons. Thank you, sir, for talking to me.